This is going to be a video on using the SEIC on a 2011 or later Ford Super Duty. SEIC stands for Stationary Engine Idle Control. Basically what it's used for is increasing the idle on your engine for whatever reason you might need it, whether real cold morning starts, keeping your RPMs up to keep your batteries charged, cooling the vehicle off faster in a hot summer. You have whatever your reasons are, but I'm going to try to make it as simple as possible. Ford publishes their thing on how to do it. I'm going to take it a little bit farther because I wanted to be able to do it without pressing my parking brake. If you know anything about it, you usually need to engage your parking brake, but as you can see, transmission's in park. I have mine wired up to this upfitter switch. My brake is not pressed down. And then I installed this potentiometer that you can adjust. To increase the engine RPMs to whatever you need them to be at. The reason why mine stopped at 2,000 RPMs is my particular install. I set it up to limit it. I usually just leave it turned down. The minimum is 900 and shuts it off. You need to have the factory upfitter switches installed on your F-250, and the option for the SEIC also needs to come on your truck from the factory, which I think with all the diesel engines it does, but could be mistaken. Alright, the first thing I'm going to recommend to go get before you even get started is Ford has a bodybuilder's layout book for F-Series trucks, E-Series vans, and whatever. I'll put a link to it. But if you search, Ford bodybuilder's layout, you can find your year, and then they have a specific one that's for electrical, and it has all their vehicles in it. The one for my 2012 is the only pages you need, because it's 30 some odd pages altogether, but you need page 25, 26, 28, and 29. I think page 27 was a wire diagram for a gasoline truck. So I guess if you're trying to do this, watching this video and using a gasoline truck, you could look at that page and it might be similar. So that, and then Ford also put out a special vehicle engineering notice about doing the high idle mod, and there's also a battery charge controller mod. Q180R2. Both of these documents in the description, I'll post links to them. They're directly from Ford PDF documents. The service bulletin, just print out the whole thing. There is some stuff in here you might not need, but breaks it down pretty Barney style. There's some charts in here that are helpful. Also some more fancy diagrams, but I'm going to show a wire diagram that's a little more simple because I'm simple and it makes it easier for me to hook up. Alright, after you print the two documents out, there's basically 3 steps that I would recommend doing so that you have everything ready and to make the project easier. The first thing you want to do is locate the wires you're going to need underneath the dashboard. You're going to have to find your PTO request, number 1. That's a yellow and green wire. I got these wire colors off of page 28. These are the wires here in the electrical bodybuilder's layout printout. Your PTO RPM is going to be green. You got to find that. PTO reference is a white brown. park brake is a white violet. In case you don't know, whenever an electrical wire is referenced, the first color on the left is the solid color of the wire. The second color is the stripe that's on the wire. So this would be a white wire with a violet stripe. Forgot to add on my list real quick here. I'll probably cut this in before I start. You want to find your upfitter switch, which is going to be located higher up in the dash than these other wires that I already talked about. For me, I decided to use switch number 4, which oddly on my truck it shows as a 1 again. I'll show you that later. Is a brown wire. Alright, I'm going to do my best to show quick where the wires are. That's your parking brake pedal. Kind of stick your head under here and don't mind my wire mess, but you're going to find right above the parking brake cable a wire conduit, and that's where a majority of your wires are going to be coming off of. As you can see, that's why the big wire mess is there. I have other electronics more than this mod hooked up. And then if I can even show it, there might not be enough light, way like above this one there's another conduit, and that's where your wires for your upfitter switches are going to be. Like here's my brown wire that I chose to use. The next step you're going to want to do is create a ground wire with 2 connections to hook up to the relay that lights up the parking brake light, as you saw in my initial video clip of how it works, even though the parking brake isn't engaged, just to make it easier to use. The best place I found to put a ground for this hookup and any other electronics is, here's your brake pedal. You look off and you have this bracket here that your parking brake's attached to. There's a nut, and I just used the connector and made a pigtail ground coming off. These connections are for other stuff, but basically you connect it here, bolt it on, make sure it's got a good ground, and then run up, and you're going to splice it and have 2 connections that go off to hook up to your relay. And you're also going to want to create a about 3-inch jumper wire to hook up so that the relay can receive the signal. Also, some parts you're going to need to purchase, if you choose to install it how I did, is a potentiometer. It's a fancy name for an adjustable knob. I didn't even say it right at first. My electronics buddy had to tell me. You need to make sure you get it at a 50,000 ohm. This is an ohm symbol, by the way. 50,000 ohm adjustment range. Reason being is you can reference in the SVE bulletin Ford put out on page number 6, your SEIC mode. They have a chart with RPMs in the ohms. The reason why I say at 50,000 is the lowest the engine is going to idle is at 51,900 RPMs. 1,000, as you can see with the chart, the numbers drop. The gap between the numbers is less and less, so that 1,000 is virtually unnoticeable. And you can go all the way up to 680, which kind of leads into, we're going to use this chart again later on when I show you the schematic. Next thing is a 12-volt automotive relay. I don't even remember where I got these. I had a bunch of them from back in the day when I had my Jeep. I did go get one just in case I needed it at Radio Shack, and it's virtually the same thing, same numbers and stuff like that. You could probably find them on eBay or any local electronics, or even like an auto parts store. I'm pretty sure they would have just your standard relay like this. This particular one is 12 volt 40 amps. We're nowhere near those limits. This is very low voltage stuff. You're also going to need a resistor. Now it needs to be at least a 680 ohm, and the maximum that I would recommend is a 4700 ohm. The reason why, with my particular install, even though your potentiometer is going to give you an adjustable RPM when you have it engaged, when you turn this all the way down, some, not all, will drop below 680 ohms, which causes the computer to fault, and it will just take you out of the mode. So if you put this resistor in line, which I'll show you later on, it will limit the RPM to 3000. That way it doesn't go over and cut it out. There's safeties in there so you won't damage your motor. But the reason why I say or up to a 4700 is a 4700 is a 2000 RPM limit. So even though your knob will adjust all the way down to 680, you can adjust this all the way, and because you have the resistor after it, it will only allow your RPM to go up to 2000. I didn't want it to go above 2000 in the high idle when I adjusted it, so that's why I chose that size in there. And then really going any more of a resistance than that kind of defeats the purpose of having the adjustment, because then you're only adjusting between a few hundred RPMs anyway. And then you'll need a few, I think minimum for the install that I'm going to show you is 3 female connectors for connecting to the relay. And then this one's a little bit smaller than the one that I used, but just to give you an example, this is for connecting to the ground wire with the 2 connections to the area I'm about to show you right now. That's an easy spot to get to for a ground for this install. As far as the potentiometer goes, you're going to have to choose where you want to mount yours. This particular one I got from Radio Shack had a pretty big knob, so I decided to mount it to the dashboard here. It's pretty simple to mount. This comes off with a set screw. It's got a little nut. You drill the right size hole wherever you want to put it and put it there. I've seen people mount them here. I saw some other people mount them over here. I saw people, to make it real easy, they put it on either side of this kickboard under the steering wheel. I saw somebody who mounted it here. This panel, there's a little spot to pop it off. This can be pulled off too. I thought about putting it in here, but this on some people's trucks has something there. I don't know. I think it's so you can turn off the passenger side airbag. My truck doesn't have that feature. It's only in an XLT. Or, I mean, you could even mount it way up underneath so you can't see it. That's up to you. If you're tackling this project, you must be at least a little bit handy. So you should be able to figure out what you want to do with your potentiometer. They make them both in a knob, and they also make them in a like a slider, like for your old type radios. If I was to do it again, maybe I would have got a slider one and found a little bit more slick of a place to put it. But this is basically out of the way. You don't really see it unless you're looking for it. Alright, so trying to explain this is kind of complicated. Instead of me trying to record looking up under the dash and it being all confusing, I drew a wire diagram to show in this video, and also for myself in case I ever have a problem in the future, because I'm obviously not going to remember this. So all of the wires that you see here are wires that I already told you to find, parts that I already told you to buy, and connections I already told you to make. This black blob going across is the lower wire, where a majority of the wires on my list are going to be found. This black blob is the wire conduit that's way farther up in the dash where your upfitter switches are. I made a bunch of different leads, but I only drew wires coming off of them for the ones that we're using. For example, this is the brown. So you're going to take your brown wire from your upfitter switches, or if you choose to use any other switch, that color wire, and it is going to connect to your yellow-green wire. Also, the about 3 inch size jumper that I had you made is going to connect at this same point, and it's going to connect to number 86 on your automotive relay. That's where this would be attached on your little piece. For me, what I did for connections is I used a wire nut. Not the best application on a vehicle, but I made sure it was really tight, and then I electrical taped around it as well. So that's going to be your first connection to make. Second easy one to make is the white-violet wire. Again, put one of these on the end of that, and you're going to connect that to number 30 on your relay. And that connection's finished. The ground wire that I had you connect to the park brake bracket, the two leads coming off that are going to go to number 85 and number 87 on your automotive relay. So at this point, you should only have, actually, at this point, everything should be hooked up to your relay. The only thing that you have left to hook up is your potentiometer, your resistor, and connect the two wires that it's going to go between. So you're going to start by finding your white-brown wire first. Connect that to either, depending on how you buy this, how you buy your potentiometer, it may come with wire leads on it, or this is one I'm just using for reference, but I bought one from Radio Shack. You're going to need to find out which two connections on your potentiometer are the in and the out. They can be reversed, the in and the out, and there's usually a third connection for a ground. I show that on the diagram here. You can ground it if you want, but it's not needed. Like when I did my install, I just did not connect this wire at all, the ground wire. So I used the white wire, or if you're making your own wire, from the white-brown into the potentiometer. Then the other connection on this particular one is red. You run that out and then connect your resistor. Earlier I was talking about you need to decide which resistor you want. If you want the maximum amount of range for your RPM being adjustable with the potentiometer from 900 RPM to 3000 RPM, you're going to put a 680 ohm resistor. Figured I'd go get a resistor real quick to show you what it looks like. Like I said earlier, I choose to use the 4700 ohm resistor. It's a little tricky to do with one hand. Because I only wanted mine to go up to 2000 RPM, not 3000. They usually come, like I bought these from Radio Shack, you'll get 5 of them. They're like $1.50, it's nothing. And it's just bare wire, so you can wire nut off to either end, it doesn't matter, it just needs to go in when you make this connection. So you're going to have the wire coming out of your potentiometer, which in this case was a red wire. Connect your resistor, and then connect that resistor to the green wire that I told you to find earlier. And at this point, you should have everything connected. I would recommend making all your connections rough at first. Quickly put them together with wire nuts. Make sure they're good connections, but put them together with wire nuts and leave all the wires hanging out of your dash. I made the mistake of doing all this thinking I had it right, getting all fancy and taping off everything, and somehow a wire came loose and it wasn't working, so I had to start all over. But rough it all in and then go out and test it. After you get everything roughed in, my potentiometer is turned all the way down. Flip your switch up. As you can see, parking brake is on, but my parking brake is actually not engaged. Just to show you that it isn't, for sure, it's up. And then as you turn this up, that beep you just heard is my DVR. And wherever you leave the potentiometer at, you can shut it off, and you don't need to turn it all the way down and re-rev it. It'll remember the setting it was at, and when you turn it on, it goes up to what it was at before. One last note I wanted to make was, if you leave the switch on when you turn your truck off and turn this up, I know about that's I think 1,000, and start your truck, it should right away go into the mode. That way if you live in a cold area and you're using this to heat your truck up in the morning, you can kind of get it going right away. I live in South Texas, so it never gets that cold. I read that there's this fail-safe in the computer where even if you left it on and you live somewhere real cold, like in Alaska, it will not allow the high idle kick in until the oil temperature in the transmission meets 150 degrees. I personally can't confirm that, but that's something good, so that way the oil's not so thick in your transmission that you burn it up. Another note that I wanted to leave you with too is, if you have a remote start and you leave it like I just showed, and you remote start your truck, it will not go into high idle. The reason being is these upfitter switches are only hot if the truck is on. So like for example, I'm just going to shut this off real quick, turn my truck off, take the key out. See, none of these switches have lights. That beep you just heard is my DVR shutting off, not the switches. They're dead. So it's not going to high idle your truck, because the key needs to be to on. When you use a remote start, your key is not in the on position, so the other relays that turn this on don't turn on. Now, if you wanted to fix that and you're fancy, you could rewire the power coming into the individual switches to a different circuit that comes on when you remote start the vehicle. But I don't have remote start, so I'm not worried about it. Hopefully this was helpful for you. Neat little mod. Reason why I decided to make this video was seen a lot of talking about it on the forums, and people got it to work, in other different ways, just wiring in a simple resistor instead of a potentiometer. And I saw a few people that showed their setup with using a relay and not having to depress your parking brake, but they didn't say how to do it. Hopefully I broke this down Barney style. I understood it. I'm a Marine, so y'all could probably figure it out. Cool little mod. I plan on doing some other ones in the future with the battery charge controller protocol.